Welcome back to another episode of Housing Solutions of New York, one step away. Safe space to transform lives one powerful step at a time. Very happy here today to introduce our guest on this particular episode of the podcast. I'm, first of all, Seth Muraskin, CEO of HSNY. And like I said, I'm very happy that we have on another CEO from in the world that we operate, options for community living. We have Yolanda Robano-Gross. Now, I want to just let the folks know, how did we get to this point? Because options is out in Suffolk County and we're based in New York City. So what actually happened? Well, I'm looking around, and as part of our mission and what we're trying to do, we're looking to expand a little bit. Now, if you can see my little logo, HSNY, there's no C in HSNY, C meaning for city. And we know there are a lot of opportunities. We know there are a lot of information, and frankly, there's a lot of talent and folks that are outside the city of New York where we mostly operate. And we want to make sure that we're talking to people to get the most information. And in doing my sort of research in terms of who best to talk to, who really understands what we do in terms of the housing space, all my diligence, all the research led always back to options. And then I said to myself, how am I going to introduce myself to options? Because if I just send a random email, hi, my name is Seth, I'm CEO of, if I got that email, I'd say maybe it's a phishing thing or maybe it's something else. But luckily, we have something in common initially. We use the same insurance broker. So what I was able to do is reach out to our broker and say, hey, if you can, Liam, shout out to Liam. Liam, options uses you and we use you and I'm looking to talk, maybe there's something. And lo and behold, he was able to put something together. And that's how HSNY and options got together, and we can talk about that further. So without further delay, if I can please introduce Yolanda Robano-Gross, CEO of Options for Community Living. How you doing, Yolanda?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good, good, good. First, I want to thank you very much. It's really great that you're able to join us here today. And as I said, we are primarily, HSNY is primarily in New York City. And when the thought happened with my folks in the last, 4, 5, 6 months that we wanted to go outside the city of New York, looking really, I'm not kidding when I say we wanted to find sort of the best that we could find in terms of, giving the kind of information on supportive housing, and the sort of work that we do matches up with the sort of work that they do. And all roads always led back to options. Just wanted to let you know about that. Now I have your bio, and I can read your bio, which is wonderful. But why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and background, and then I'm going to ask the question right after. How did you get here in terms of CEO of Options? So, Yolanda, why don't you tell us a little bit about in terms of where you were, where you have come from, and how you got to Options as a CEO?
Sure. I actually got into this world absolutely by accident. Um, I have a bachelor's from Marist College in social work. I then went and got a master's in social work from Yeshiva University, and then a master's in health administration from Hofstra. But really, I should be an English teacher running the drama club at the local high school. I was a theater kid my whole life. Unfortunately, not talented enough for Broadway, so I figured I was going to go. I went into Marist as an English major. I was going to teach English in high school, run the local drama club, and live the life of Mr. Siller, who was my English teacher, who was the best. And the Siller family, as you know, runs Tunnel to Towers for their brother Stephen, who I went to school with. So Stephen's older brother, Russ, was my English teacher, and I was going to emulate him. Proving that your life can be changed by one person, I had an amazing adjunct who taught intro to social work. Everyone has to take a social science.
Mhm.
Intro to social work was on Monday nights, so I didn't have to have Friday classes. So that's why I took. She opened a very different world to me, and I fell in love with it so much so that I took another class of hers the next semester, and by sophomore year was a social work major and no longer an English major. So sometimes people are put on your path and they put you in that direction. So really into options quite by accident. I was a hospital social worker. That's where I started at Montefiore in the Bronx. Worked my way up there. wanted to get a job in administration, had no administrative experience. An amazing woman named Joanne Maviglia, who was the vice president of clinics for UCP State, I'm sorry, gave me a job running 3 of her Article 28 clinics for the IDDD population, which I knew nothing about.
Mhm.
But she said, "You want to do this? Go ahead." And she gave me a shot to do that. And I really quickly learned that disabilities was my love. I really thought I'll do it for a year. I'll go back to the hospital. I'll get a real job. But I fell in love with the world of disability services. And as you know, in our world, you're either in or you're out. There's no
Right.
being lukewarm in this world. So I kind of fell in love from there and just agency to agency. I was at PSCH for 5 years, which is now Well Life Network. I was at FIGS for 5 years, and now I'm here, and I've been here. It'll be 12 years in October. I took over when the founder retired.
How did that happen? Because I know that options actually dates back, before
Yeah,
HSNY is 2001.
yeah.
You're
I
1982. How
started
did
school.
you get to the point where you were from hospital, you're doing social work in hospital, that you went into housing? How did you get to options, I guess? How did you bridge that?
Really, again, just accident. Honestly, it's so funny. When I went back, I loved the hospitals, and I loved working in hospital social work. And that's really, I had a boss there who was amazing. He said, "Go back and get the degree in healthcare administration. That's your path. You were always more of a macro person than a micro person.
Mhm.
This will help you." And housing and disability services in general, again, I kind of fell into it. I really wanted an administrative job in the hospitals and had no experience, so couldn't get one. Someone was willing to give me a shot, and I always, always, always remember that when someone's sitting across from me with the ink barely dry on their diploma, that someone gave me a shot, so I always try to. Um, and it really just evolved from there. Once I found out that disability services were where I wanted to be,
Mhm.
it was a matter of growing in position and moving through agencies. When I got to Well Life Network, now was PSCH then, they had a director of developmental disability services, and that kind of took over their day programs, their residential programs, that whole umbrella. So really, just for whoever or whatever put me on this path, it's where I landed. But if you had asked, 20-year-old Yolanda where she would have been, I would have been picking the spring musical right now. That's it.
No, that's good. So when you arrived at Options, and was that your first real, I guess, introduction to supportive housing or the supportive housing world, or were you tangentially involved? Or you understanding it before?
Yeah, no, when I was at FEGS, I was their vice president for
Okay,
residential.
okay,
On the DD side, not on the mental health side. But that was my role at FEGS. And
okay,
funny enough, when I was at FEGS, my department was bigger than Option was when I walked in
uh,
the door here.
how big was it when you took over as CEO? How big was it?
15 million.
Okay, and how many staff did you have then?
Oh, probably 160 or so.
Okay, and now how big are you
Now,
now? Both
now
staff
we're
and budget?
32,260 staff.
That's very impressive. Okay, so you're there the first day, you get at Options, and the first impression that comes across you sitting at your desk was.
Are they really going to let me be in charge? Honestly, a little bit of imposter syndrome. Um, yeah, that was really my first impression. I walked in, there were very good people there. I was a little afraid to walk in the door, knowing I had replaced the person that was the only person that had led the organization
Yeah,
before.
they were there like 30 years or
She
such,
was there
right?
32 years. It
Yeah.
was her baby. She founded the organization. She saw that need in the 80s as much of our sister agencies did back then, post Willowbrook, post
Hmm.
deinstitutionalization, for people to be placed out in the community. So walking in and taking the reins from her, and really it was like one day we met, signed over the bank accounts, and then it was like, "All right, bye." So taking over the reins with very, very different styles,
Right.
generationally very different. They weren't quite sure what to make of me. I started, again, I was trained differently. I came up in a different generation. So I was showing up at the residences and showing up at the offices, and they were like, "What is she looking for? Why is she here?"
Hmm.
Because again, it just didn't happen before. It's not good or bad. It's just different.
Hmm.
But I was always taught that how am I going to make a decision for something if I haven't put my hands on it,
Hmm.
and seen it myself. So my first line of business when I walked in the door was to get out to all the sites, meet the staff out in the field. But it took people a little by surprise.
So, do you think that your background and your degree, social work, and those things that sort of led you here, made you a better CEO or a better candidate for CEO? Obviously, you've done great since you've been, but do you think that gave you an edge, not for competitive purposes, but gave you an edge in terms of understanding the population or understanding what had to happen?
I do. All joking aside, I really feel that that set me up in a better place. The mix of the social work background and the healthcare admin background is a really nice balance because I still know how to manage the clients when they're on the phone with
Hmm.
me, right? My clinical head comes in when there's a client's mom or dad on the phone, and how to manage that. So that it was a big help. It lets me handle both sides of the house. That and the fact that my mom owned a local bar my whole life, and I was the Friday night bartender for a long time. And if you can manage a bar full of people,
You
you
absolutely.
can manage almost anything. So that the people skills that I learned there, coupled with the social work degree, definitely good on how to manage people and how to assess a situation and how to see a crisis when it's breaking out in front of you. So yeah, those skills definitely were helpful.
No, that makes lots of sense.
Yeah.
So you're starting there, and I think from the same sort of mission that Options has, we have the same thing. We are a tremendous believer, a great believer, a really big believer, in the importance of supportive housing services, the wraparound services.
Right.
From your perspective, when you got there in six when you started 12 years ago, and now, what has been the biggest thing that's changed for wraparound services, or have you noticed anything that hasn't changed, or is it the core that's remaining, or something like that in terms of the wraparound support that we need to give all of our clients?
Sure. The core is the same. I mean, it's essentially the same. That we have a need, as do we in an industry, for more services available to our clients. A lot of them are coming out of long-term situations, hospitals, shelters, they're street homeless. First you have to learn how to live in a home again.
Right.
Now you're living in a home with strangers. Most people have tough time living with the people they choose to live with. So now put in that. So those extra services, everything from care coordination, case management, um, having clinical services behind you, medication management, ADLs. I have people that long term in a hospital, right? I've been hospitalized in Pilgrim State for the last 15, 20 years. I don't even know how to do my laundry anymore,
Right.
much less how to cook a meal. I've never had to cook a meal. 3 meals appear on the tray in front of me. Um, so the need for and the funding for extra staff, extra support, post COVID, a lot of the day programs didn't reopen,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
People don't have a place to go anymore. So to have people hanging around the house and not have the funding to increase the amount of staff when maybe pre-COVID there were 3 people home during the day and now there's 12.
Hmm.
How are we getting the same number of people out into the community to actively participate and reassimilate into their community without the support behind it? So those wraparound services are essential.
No, it's a good point. Homeless or being unhoused in and of itself is traumatic, but in terms of what you're saying, if you're at Pilgrim State, which is a hospital for 15 years, and you're expecting, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you've never done that for yourself,
Yeah.
that's a tremendous challenge, and to overcome that. So, in terms of the challenges facing not only staff but also clients, what do you think the biggest issue right now facing Options as it relates to supportive housing is? We can always say funding. Funding is always a tremendous issue, but putting funding aside for the moment, Then, of course, everything is easy. But putting funding aside for the moment, what do you think the biggest challenge is now?
Housing is still a challenge. There's not enough housing units. And even when housing units are given, right, through the state and other municipalities, finding appropriate units,
Right.
finding what's available, Long Island is expensive.
Yeah.
Fair market rate is not really fair. Um, and then you throw in on top of the fact that most people, and I know it's 2026 and it's beyond ridiculous, but most people still don't want our guys. They think
Right.
it's really good over there. They think, I have people throw things at me like, "Oh, you're a good person. You do God's work." Great. It's all great. It's not. We're just helping people. But we want to help people. And by the way, we're buying a house on your block, and all of a sudden it's a different story.
Right. So,
Uh,
so when so when you've done that, when you're bringing program into community, and they're saying things like you're doing God's work, and I've heard that too, and it's a wonderful thing to hear. But when they come on the block and they start changing, what's the first reaction? What's the second reaction? And what's the overall misconception that people seem to have? Because people can talk about, yeah, this is a great thing that you're doing, but just don't do it near me.
the overall misconception, and so option serves primarily three populations,
Right.
right? Those with mental health concerns, individuals who are HIV positive living with AIDS, and individuals who are unhoused or at risk for losing their housing, right? Those are our three major populations. Um, People don't, somehow they equate those populations with violence first, with being uneducated second. They sometimes mix mental health up with developmental disabilities. They want to know. I love to build a new house, and the neighbor says, "What kind of people are you putting in there?" I'm like, "Oh, two arms, two legs, a head. Pretty much like the people that live there."
Right.
So that's the sticking point usually. What we see on the news, and I've been saying this for years, and I want to have this big campaign, and I think a bunch of us should get together and do it. What we see on the news is the bad stuff, right?
Mhm.
Crime sells, excitement sells. I never see on the news something about an individual with a diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder who just finished their college degree,
Mhm.
right? Or an individual with serious major depressive disorder who gets up and goes to work every day and somehow is able to overcome so they can get to work every day. Um, I want there to be a campaign that says, I am the face of mental health or I am the face of homelessness, and not have it be the people that most people assume it is, which is the woman or a gentleman outside of Penn Station with a cardboard sign.
Right.
And
Mhm.
while that's certainly a part of our population, it's not all of our population.
Right.
People just don't understand that. If we count those numbers, right? Depending on what statistic you're looking at, it's 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 people have a mental health issue, right? So if you stand on your block and count houses, what you don't realize is those people, as they keep calling our guys,
Yeah.
um, are actually your neighbors. And at some point, if you count enough, one of them is living in your house.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair because we have the same issue here, the misconception, the misperception. Sometimes folks, thinking that if you happen to be unhoused, if you happen to be homeless, you don't get to do the same things as people who are housed. I mean, simple things like walking on the street, or because it's assumed that the moment that you're going to do something that's not so great because you just happen to be without a home or at a place to be right now. I mean, most of our folks, in terms of our families with children side, head of household female with children, and with children who going through the trauma of everything else growing up, plus not having a place to call home. It's rather impressive, and I take my, I always think that for the kids going through it, I mean, God bless that they're able to do it, and that graduate and all those successes should be absolutely shared. Have you had a, and and I'll ask about funding in a second, but have you had a situation over the years where you have a plan, you're looking to do it, and either community or neighborhood or the misperception, whatever it happens to be, sort of gets in the way and prevents you from executing on your plan?
Oh, absolutely. There's community boards you have to face, right, when you're coming to a neighborhood.
Yeah.
What most people don't realize is that we're under, and not just options, just our industry is under such a strict set of eyes and guidelines
Mhm.
that our houses are usually the best house on the block, right?
Right.
Because if Yolanda chooses not to mow my lawn, paint my house, take in my garbage, mm, too bad. If options doesn't, there's, millions powers that be coming down on us. So we're usually the best neighbors. The houses always look the best. We're really good at working with our local legislators if there's a concern. The neighbors have no problem coming to me if there's a concern,
Mhm.
to work things out. So, yeah, we've had people try and throw a wrench in the, why do they have to be here? That
Mhm.
kind of thing. Can't they be somewhere else?
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
No, I know. Again, it's in our industry and what we do. That's either the first or second or third thing that you're going to hear all the time, as it relates to just as an also aside before I ask about funding again. How many structures do you own, and how many units do you actually operate?
we operate, we just went through these numbers the other day. We operate about 180, 190 units. We own 145 of them.
Okay. And has because from our perspective, from where HSNY is coming, we don't own, we rent.
Right.
We are. I want to change that at some point because being a tenant across the city is not exactly where we want to be. But in terms of the difficulty or the barriers to to buy or to purchase or to get the financing, has it been tough? Has it been easier? Was there a period of time in the last 12 years where it was where the money was freer or the money was less free, or has it been steady across the board?
It's tough in that a lot of the grants and the awards that come down don't include capital funding.
Right.
So, here it is, and here's the money to run the program and hire the staff, except for then what? So you do a lot of finagling, right? You'll match one grant with another grant to back up the capital funds, except for that, there's a limited pool to all of those. So now I have an Ishai grant where I can put in housing and the services, but half has run out of money, right? So now I have to wait for the capital piece to come into play.
Right.
So that is tough. There's the logic of some of the grants will allow for rent. Well, if you allow me to pass through the rent, I'd rather you allow me to pass through to own it. It's a lot easier to maintain our own. We have some great landlords, so I cannot complain. They support us. We're lucky in that, but a lot of times it's easier to manage your own.
Mhm. All right, so let me ask the question that I spend the first hour and a half every day concern myself with and getting grayer in terms of funding. Have you noticed that funding is easier? Have you noticed that it's gotten worse in the sense that the more rules and regs, to your point, a lot of eyes watching, which is why it makes sense that your house would be the best on the block. But have you noticed in 12 years a consistent pattern, an up or a peak or valley, or has it just been a struggle the entire time?
So it's not consistent. Um, because it really depends on who the powers that be are. It's
Right.
funny, I never realized because again, I was an English major. Who cared? I never realized how aware I would need to be of
Right.
who is in office. And it's not partisan, it just is. I need to be aware of who backs what, right? And who's in favor of what. So, there is that, and that's a fact, and there's nothing we can do about that. As far as, going up for the lobbying days and speaking to people before the budget gets voted on.
Mhm.
We're very involved with ACL, right? The Association for Community Living. They are great champions of all the organizations. So we try and get out there. But it's tough. It's tough to always be waiting on someone else
Yeah.
to make your decisions. Right now, as you know, we're waiting for the budget to be signed.
Yep.
It should have been done in April, and now it
Right.
should have been done in May, and maybe it'll be done in June. Hopefully, knock on wood, hopefully. But waiting for that and try to establish your own internal budget when you don't know what's coming. That's a big deal. I have an amazing CFO. She works magic, but I don't know how. Also the delay in reimbursement, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you have to float until
Mhm.
the money comes in. Yeah, you get a big windfall 6 months later, and we're a good sized organization with the reserves to do so.
Mhm.
Some of my colleagues who are smaller don't have that luxury and will take lines of credit. So they'll use the line of credit and then they'll pay it off. And they'll use it, they'll pay it off. Which is, think about if you had to run a household that way, just
Hmm.
not the safest way to do so. You don't have that safety net under you.
No, I mean, and the same thing with us in terms of, at some point, the money does come, but
Right.
and we're expense based. So at the end of the day, we're looking to get reimbursed, or we're looking to get what the expenses are. And when the budget says X, it's always great because our budgets are great.
Right.
It's the cash flow that's the challenge with it, making sure that you get all of that. I mean, and especially our fiscal year ends next month. So when it gets to the end of the fiscal year, that's when the spigot gets really turned off. And, sometimes the forecasting turns into praying, and that's not a good way to do. Luckily, similar to you, we're okay. We've sort of managed through all that and we're able to. But, for other orgs that are doing the same work that are not either able to manage it or not the size or all the things, it's tough. And I feel for them because at the end of the day, the work that we need to do and work that we have to do, it impacts people the way they live. And, not having that steady stream or that consistency coming through is, oh my goodness, an incredible challenge. And to your point, in terms of the other orgs that you belong to, do you think that nonprofits work better if they work together, or is it the kind of thing where you want to keep in your own lane, or do you think it's a good thing that people sort of arm in arm can work together? I mean, and that, like for example, we're all going to go to Shinny and doing all the lobbying thing. We lobby ourselves, but I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, that the more we are working together, the more that we are arm in arm together, the better it is. I think if that makes sense.
100%. We live in a world that a lot of our friends don't, right? We live in this 24/7 world. Right? We live in a world where my friends are like, "Woohoo, snow day," and I'm like, "Oh, snow day!" Like that's our worst nightmare.
Right.
So we need to have each other because of that.
Mhm.
Larry Grubler, who I love from TSI, always says there's no competition in this world because unfortunately there's enough business to go around.
Yeah.
Um, which is very true, unfortunately. So I think yes, I think that those kind of organizations are essential for us to live together and work together. And then we know who our people are, right?
Right.
Everybody knows on Long Island that Options has the largest HIV housing program. Fantastic. I know that if I have someone with serious veteran needs, I'm calling Frank Amalfitano at Beacon House. We know who our people are. And that way we can serve the most amount of people. I get somebody on the phone and somehow they always find us, right? I don't know how, but they hit zero whenever they get to us. They get me on the phone and someone calling from the outside. And I need to find out so I can look up quickly whether or not they're actually an options client. But I need to find out really quickly what they need. And I need to get them to somebody else, either if it's internally or externally. Because I say this to my staff, and my daughter is 24, so I have a lot of staff that are similar in age to her.
Hmm.
So I say to them all the time, look, you're going to get a wrong number at some point. The answer is never, ever, ever, you're not my client. The answer is never, ever, ever, you're not options client. Because when somebody makes that call, you don't know what bandwidth they have left in them. And that might be the last call they have the energy to make. So we need to hand them off to someone, whether or not I can say, my friend Seth is in Manhattan and that's who you're looking for, and let me get you to him. Or, let me just get you to Krista, who's my intake administrator. She can go through the list, see what we have for you, or get you to someone else who can. But you can't drop that person because you don't know what it took them to make the call
Right.
or if they have the energy left in them to make another one.
100%. And because you don't know. One of the things that Options also has, and you've had it, I think, over 30 years, is you have your store, your thrift store right on Hawkins Avenue.
Yeah.
If you can just tell us a little bit of how that operates, how that works, and how successful it is. I know you're not there to make a fortune. I get all that. But what's the purpose behind having the operation, the thrift store there?
So the thrift store is awesome. I have a lady who's been with us 35 years, Linda Longo. She is the only staff thrift store. Aside from Linda, it's run by community volunteers. So I have a lot of retirees in the area and clients who utilize it for pre-vocational and community integration. So I have clients running the registers, steaming the garments, helping with the donations when they get dropped off. Um, community integration kind of at its finest, and mixing with and making friends with some of these senior volunteers. And there's some true friendships that have come here that may not have other under other circumstances.
Hmm.
Um, it runs as a business. We get donations. They can go down into the storage facility until they're ready for the right season. They rotate out. Clothing, small appliances like toasters, coffee pots, that kind of stuff. Household goods, dishes, glasses, records, etc. And it's huge in the community. We just did a friend and family's day last weekend. We now are and who knew, but we all have to keep learning. We now are a site for a balloon mission. So we have a drop box. So balloon
Got
is
it.
not
That's great.
good. Now I know enough to know it's not good to release balloons, but I
Right.
didn't know that balloons have to be disposed of at a certain place. And I didn't know with all the birthday parties I did for Morgan over the years that I was not supposed to just pop them and put them in the garbage. I was supposed to find a place for them. So we partnered with Balloon Mission. We have their receptacle.
Mhm.
People will drop off their used balloons. They'll come. So it's also a green initiative, which is kind of nice. But the thrift shop itself it's this hidden gem. People drop off all sorts of things. It's kind of funny because in Nassau County, I'm pretty Western Nassau, and the thrift shop's in Ronkonkoma. So friends, neighbors, I don't know who leaves stuff in my driveway, and
In
I
your
park.
driveway.
And then I'll do a run every couple weeks of a car full of stuff to bring it out. But it's a great program. It's
Yeah, no,
very
no, it
informative.
sounds wonderful. And when I was, looking at and researching all that, that's tremendous. Again, you have one staffer who's been there for 35 years, which is wonderful. But the fact that it's an anchor for the community
Yeah.
and an anchor for people and a place to go and a place to, come and do the things that you're doing, it's tremendous. I'm reading this from your annual report. Options is helping me get situated so I can take the next steps in my life. I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to work with options and for them to help me get stable housing. Is there a particular success story in the tenure that you've been with options that you remember that stands out that is like, this is the reason why I come to work every day?
Yeah. So there's a lot of them, but I always defer to Marianne, who was a client who's no longer with us. Marianne was street homeless.
Mhm.
She she and I, you think about it, right? Same age, we grew up in the same area, same demographic, and we used to talk all the time. She'd say, and there's no rhyme or reason, right? Why me here and you there, right? Luck of the draw. It is what it is. So she was street homeless for a long time. She worked with one of our care coordinators. She did not want to be housed. And so this is pre-COVID, so it's got to be 7, 8 years ago. We were having a Thanksgiving moods all over the news, get people inside. It was going to be bitter cold. It was going to be terrible. She was in one of our big encampments here in Nassau County. And
Mhm.
what people don't realize is, there's these encampments of people living that they kind of hide in plain sight. People would never know. So Debbie, who was her care coordinator, was like, Marianne, come on, you gotta be inside for this. Um, we took her, we placed her, we did a little bit of, ask forgiveness and not permission because it was before a holiday and I needed to get her into a vacancy and I couldn't get to all the powers that be, but I figured we'd work it out Monday. Um, she came, she lived with us. It was great. But from Marianne came not only Marianne, she then, once she kind of learned to trust, took me and a few of my colleagues, not just to the encampment, I knew where that was, but she took me to the Uniondale Library.
Mhm.
And a lot of our libraries, believe it or not, have a large population of unhoused people. People don't even know, right? There's computers, you can look for work.
Mhm.
There's books, it's free. Right? There's a bathroom. There's probably some couches. And if you're quiet, you can get from 9 o'clock in the morning till 8, 9 o'clock at night and have a safe place to be.
Mhm.
Marianne took me to the Uniondale Library where she paved the way because people were not having me or anybody or anything because social worker meant APS, CPS, something bad um, going on. So we met with a lot of people.
Mhm.
I will say now, still, we have multiple friends of Marianne. It was like, I say, like the butterfly effect, it was the Marianne effect.
Mhm.
Still, I'll have people that call and say, did you know Marianne? I know her. she introduced me to so and so. So and so introduced us. So when she was passing and she was sick, she had said, my life doesn't. I wanted my life to mean something, Yolanda. You and I are the same age. Why doesn't my life mean what your life means? And we sat, and I sat in the hospital, and we went through the list of people whose names we were serving, and those are just people I could think of off the top of my head. I'm like, their life doesn't mean anything. You saved all these lives.
Yeah. Yep.
Um,
Yep.
you know, so
You
that's what's important.
Yeah, I mean, if that doesn't get you up and motivated and all the frustrations that happen in this sort of line of work and the roadblocks that are put in place by government, by funders, by regulations, by neighbors and community and everything else under the sun, that's the reason why. So at the end of the day, you have a Marianne story like that, and that takes you. My guess is that even your staff who either knew or familiar, that's what gets them up and going everywhere. Because I tell people all the time, when you come into a world in terms of what we're doing, supportive housing or in shelter, where we have a lot of facilities here in the city, no one is going to retire on a beach. You're doing that. You're here because you want to be here and you're looking to help. And I also used to say that what you get to put on your 1040, your tax return, in terms of your job. I help people, and that's a really tremendous thing to do.
Well,
It's tough to sometimes in the weeds when you're involved in everything. It can be a little disheartening and you forget a little bit, but when you have a chance to sit down and reflect, you can. How can folks learn more about options if they want to support or help? What we'll end up doing is we'll put some links and everything, so we want people to interact with options and find out. But what's the best way to reach out and sort of to help if they want to assist and help with the good work that you're doing out in Nassau and Suffolk?
yeah, the phone is easiest always, so it's 631-361-9020. The website is optionscl.org. Always easy way to follow us. And then, like everyone else, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, we have it all. Um, everything from coming to volunteer in the thrift shop to today we had Zebra Technologies did a community project. They were in the storage room at our thrift shop going through, and they were there all day. They sent the whole team of staff. They were there all day sorting, going through clothes because the donations kind of just come, right? But we're getting ready for summer. So going through bags, putting them in sizes, adults, children, men's, women, so that they can be brought up and we can rotate out the stock. So people come and do days like that all the time, which is great.
I mean, that's wonderful. And yes, we're all doing work that makes a lot of sense and helps so many people. It's just sometimes people just don't see it, and I just want to make sure that's what I wanted to make sure and chat with you. And just get a sense of your story and how and what you've done over at Options the last dozen of years or so. Again, your org has been around for, gosh, almost 40, 46 years, but
Yeah,
the fact that you continue to do what you do and your staff does, I mean, kudos to everybody over there.
yeah,
And the work that's being done is not only necessary, important, but it really, really, it changes people's lives, which is
yeah.
wonderful. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
So Yolanda, I want to thank you for spending a couple of moments today in chatting with me. Hopefully that our audience will get to hear a little bit about what you've done out in Suffolk County and the great and good work that you're doing. And at the end of the day, it's the kind of thing where supportive housing really gets you to the next level. And if you can effectuate a good supportive housing program, you get to effectuate good human beings. And at the end of the day, that's really why we're here. So
Huh?
I want to thank you. And I thank everybody, in terms of for listening. I want to thank Options for that participation and letting folks know that both HSNY and Options. It's a great place to participate, great place to partner, and a great place to really, if you're looking to do some good work, we're happy to talk with you and love for you to be part of the work that we're all doing. So Yolanda, thank you so much for your time and effort and all the work that you're doing. And everybody, just remember, in terms of where we are, we're all one step away. So it could happen to anybody. And that's the most important thing. So if there's a situation or a problem or there's something that's going on, it's not something like, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. You want to help your neighbor, you want to help your friend, you want to help your family. And that's what we look to do because our clients are the neighbors and families that we all have. So Yolanda, thank you so much for joining today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you.